Ben Bernanke, if he keeps his job, will have to fight asset bubbles without snuffing out the economic recovery. Joining us now with his thoughts on how the Fed chief can do that is Ken Rogoff. He's professor of economics and public policy at Harvard University. Ken is former chief economist at the IMF and co-author of the new book called This Time is Different: 8 Centuries of Financial Folly. Oh, the humanity, right, Ken? Well, we're very glad to have you with us here early in the morning, especially on this Friday morning. Let's start off by talking about Bernanke. I mean, he had a pretty tough job interview in some ways yesterday. What would be your advice to him right now?
I think he did a pretty good job yesterday from what I've read about it. You know, it's a very difficult political job. There's a lot of anger. They don't know where to direct it. They're directing it at him. There's important questions about the future of the Fed. That's really what's at stake here.
How much power should the Fed have?
Well, for sure, it should have monetary independence. I think it would be really a signal event if Congress pulls back some of that. You can kiss goodbye to years of low inflation if that happens. Not right away, but I think that would be very dangerous. The regulatory is more complicated. They need to be in the game. They need the information on the banking system to have feedback. Whether they're on top, whether they're in the mix somehow, I think is less critical.
Ken, you mentioned inflation. What is the right balance right now with the rate environment and managing against all this talk of bubbles?
They're in a very tough spot at the moment. You know, just having the recovery, that's no doubt, that's at the top of the agenda at the moment. You know, yes, I'm very worried about having bubbles in the future and another financial crisis, but we're still digging out of the last one.
Is it possible to spot bubbles as they're forming?
No and yes. I mean, I think the big issue is if you see tons of borrowing that's fueling an asset bubble, as we saw with housing. That's often the case in many countries over history. That's when you worry. It's not so much that prices go up and down. I mean, what can you do about that? It's when you see a lot of borrowing, because the borrowing's what causes the problems.
So what can you do about it? I just want to, if you see these sort of borrowing, I mean, what's the right way to attack that?
Well, I mean, conceptually, what Ben Bernanke says is right. Regulation is the right way to attack it, to have a structure where it's not so easy to borrow. I have to say, especially short term, it's absurd how little regulation we have on that, how inflated our financial systems become. And I must say, I don't see them doing much. But on monetary policy, that's tougher. I do think they can't be so pure about it, because we don't have good regulation. And if we don't, and you see one of these bubbles developing, they probably do need to lean against it.
Ken, one of the comments that you hear from strategists on Wall Street is bubbles might be the only way towards a recovery, whether it's the price of gold or stocks. Prices improving, so people actually will be spending money, what have you. What's your thought on that?
Well, it's nice to see prices improving, and frankly, it's not so atypical to have equities lead by a long ways in in any recovery, but after one of these financial crises. But you know, you can't create value out of nothing. I mean, the fundamentals need to be there. I think it's going to take a while to heal this economy, especially the unemployment picture.
So you wouldn't raise rates right now if you were sitting in Ben Bernanke's chair?
Oh, goodness, no. I mean, it would be suicidal. I mean, no. I mean, I think the question is, do we start talking about it in the middle of next year, when you need to say we're going to anchor inflation? Of course, they have to say that. I think they're in a difficult position just getting out of this liquidity trap someday of being able to raise rates.
Unemployment rate expected to be 10.2%, the same as what we saw in the previous month today. What's your expectation?
It sounds reasonable for the moment, because we certainly had a little bit better growth recently. But I think over the next 6 months, we're going to see higher unemployment, or certainly, you know, less not necessary job creation. We're right on track for a typical deep financial crisis. It's going to last a while. I don't think we're going to see the picture really improving till well into next year. And there's, frankly, not a lot the president can do about it.